Swazdola. I am Seraphis, the procrastinating space pirate, and today we've fully returned to our Cypher System theme with the first of the genre books, or Whitebooks, as they are lovingly referred to in the community. As a side note, I had a question I wanted to ask the lead designer of this book, Bruce R. Cordell, as he was the guest on the CU Live last week, but I may have kind of fallen asleep before it started, so that doesn't fucking matter anymore. Haha, let's get on with this. Just to pre-emphasize all this, the Cypher Whitebooks all have the same focus. They are tailored towards providing you, players and GMs, with all the tools and ideas you need for each genre. This is noteworthy, as while they provide example settings, MCG prides itself on the Cypher System Redbook and Whitebooks being setting neutral. As the Redbook rules section had said, the book is a blank set of mechanics. You are expected to tailor and customize them to the setting you create and use them for. Welcome, traveler. Have you heard? The stars are fire. This is the first of the Whitebooks, focused on science fiction. Within this book, you'll find information on running various types of sci-fi games. Wait, what? This isn't just sci-fi? Oh, you simple idiot. There's a big difference between Star Trek and Aliens, or even The Martian and Star Trek, or Star Trek, Star Wars, Stargate, and Battlestar Galactica. And this book addresses them all. For the most part, these are information sections explaining different styles and themes of sci-fi, and how to use Cypher to create that same feel. These are great and actively go into examples of so many different subgenres, referencing media like Star Wars, Stargate, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica, Babylon 5, War of the Worlds, V, and more. This part is very much for the GM, and as it's straight up advice for different types of sci-fi. So that's chapters 3 and 4 covered. What about chapter 5? This covers a massive 100-point table on future conflicts that can be used to spur on adventures in a sci-fi setting. This table is really good if you've never seen a single episode of Star Trek in your life, and the gods bless you if that's true. Otherwise, yeah, you'll probably read through this table and think to yourself, oh, I remember that episode of, and then insert the TOS, TNG, DS9, Voyager, or Enterprise episode that reminds you of. Not trying to make it seem like this table is useless, but it's very familiar in a good way to older sci-fi fans. Next up in Chapter 6, Cosmic Set Pieces and Optional Roles. Hang on to your butts, folks, this is a long one. I actually really like this chapter for all the sci-fi goodness it brings to the game and the mechanics. Within the Red Book, it already talks about vehicular combat and mechanics, and how to adapt for vehicle versus person fights. But here, this is where we get the meaty mechanics and advice from MCG about running space-themed settings. Within this chapter is advice on different types of sci-fi, like what changes to think about if it's more hard sci-fi, like The Martian or The Expanse. Void travel and how things can go from fine to catastrophic in seconds when away from supports like other ships, stations, or planets. The effects of the vacuum of space, and the effects that can have on mundane and emergency situations. How spacesuits can become a second skin, and the effects of acceleration. And that's just multiple pages of advice and mechanics for a hard sci-fi setting. We've also got extended combat rules for vehicles, base combat task modifiers for vehicles, superior ship systems when a vehicle or system is more powerful or advanced, and my personal favourite addition to the system, bridge combat rules! Yes, it's as awesome as you think it can be, and with a good narrator GM, you can feel like you're the key crewman of a starship bridge. Let's be fair, everyone is thinking about being a bridge crewman of the Enterprise. Except me, give me the SDF-1 Macross, baby! I mean, I'm no bridge bunny, despite what you may think about this amazing hair. Haha. This chapter rounds out with a quick rules table on spacecraft versus colossal creatures, and spacecraft versus regular creatures. Let's put it this way, if Rise of Skywalker was playing Cypher, Kylo Ren would have killed Rey Palpatine.
Sir, really?
Alright, let's not start a war. I don't know what type of war it is. We're then provided 2 pages of tables featuring table aids for everyone, going over PC weapon system options, PC piloting system options, and PC science and engineering system options. Honestly, I think this is the ice magic on top of the ice cream for me. This and the bridge rules are just awesome. After this, we're presented with some additional optional rules for different kinds of settings. Here we have the psionics. That talks about the different levels of psionics in different settings, from Star Wars' The Force to Babylon 5's telepaths. Now, it also presents options for psionics from a latent point of view as well, where you essentially gain an ability, but it either requires time or a recovery roll to be expended to use. When I was much newer to the system, I found this mechanic to be more restraining, but as I've gotten the hang of Cypher, it is in fact balanced pretty well. However, an alternative way of doing latent psionics, posthumanism, that's later, or magic in a fantasy setting, is, in my opinion, by having a dedicated subtle cipher list. Quick tangent. So hear me out. What I've thought of is, when it comes to latent abilities for PCs, if they so wish, allow them to, with the GM's approval, always work with your GM, compose a list of 6 abilities from the appropriately themed table in the Red Book. In this case, from those abilities that are connected to commands mental powers, focuses mind over matter, and the like. 2 low tier, 2 mid tier, and 2 high tier abilities. They get as many fixed subtle ciphers as their tier level, so a maximum of 6. They can then choose at each new tier their new ability for their latent power, treating each power like a cipher but rolling it different each time, or having its level equal to the level it was gained at, or having its level always be equal to the PC's tier. It always depends, and these are just variations on what I've done, and they've been dependent on types of games I was running and the type of setting. Tangent over. And now we have posthumans. This is a lot like the latent psionics rule, but generally builds up to including power shifts as a form of superhumanism to compare the differences of normal people and posthumans. Think of it like the Bungie Halo franchise. Compare a Spartan 2 to literally everyone else. Yeah, that's a posthuman in this book. We also have a section on minor and major effects for sci-fi settings. These are really to give GMs and players ideas on how to use GM intrusions, player intrusions, and player nat 90s and 20s with their foci. After that, we have salvage of derelict spacecraft section and ideas for GMs on how to deal with ranking difficulty, types of salvage, and spatial hazards. And boy, do they want to dive into the amount of ways space can kill the player characters, from asteroids and micrometeors to radiation and black holes, to a section they just call space anomalies. And I tell you, I should have expected this crew to come up with such creative ways to do alternative versions of the classic phrase rocks full. That rocks full, everybody dies. Looking at you, Bruce. Next up, weak, sim, strong, and post-singularity AIs.
Really?
Don't worry, none of these compare to a Cephalon like you, buddy. Yeah, so this section is on the different kinds of AI that may be present in a sci-fi setting. Weak AI is akin to what we have today. Sim AI is like the Starship AI in Star Trek or regular droids in Star Wars. Strong AIs are like Data from Star Trek, R2D2 from Star Wars, or ED from Mass Effect. Post-singularity AIs are akin to Jet Jaguar's final form from the Godzilla Singularity Point anime, or my own Nexus, a self-producing, generational artificial sentience that learns into infinity with every new generation. Next up, Ancient Ultras. This is the section that's meant to help you design your setting's proto-civilizations, precursors, progenitors, protocultures, whatever you want to call them. These Ancient Ultras examples are separated into 7 distinct groups, though if you want to get anime weird, it doesn't quite cover that, but these are just examples. This leads into further topics subheadings of Are We Alone, which talks about how you can handle extraterrestrial life in your setting, from many to just a few, to having discovered none whatsoever. Lastly, we have Incorporating the Fantastical, which more or less goes over everything we've talked about and gives advice on how to incorporate this advice into your setting of your game. Good advice and tips, but going into it would just be a summary of everything I just talked about. Chapter 7, Equipment and Armaments. Wait, what? That was all the last chapter? Oh, fucking hell. So let's talk about stuff. This beginning part mostly goes over advice and tips for stuff costs based on the setting they're in, and how to adjust it. The costs based on greater or lower setting rating. Additionally, there's a section on stuff from a PC's foci. All this is to say, this covers every bit of stuff, from the contemporary to the fantastical, from mobile phones to artifact death rays. 27 pages of stuff you could want or need. Chapter 8 Vehicles and Spacecraft. Oh, yeah, this is my baby. Within this section of 22 pages is the granddaddy motherload of what we've all been waiting for. Roll ups of stats for vehicles, mechs, spacecraft, transportation devices, and time machines. Want to recreate aliens? Grab an ABC. Want to go Pacific Rim on some kaiju from the Red Book? Grab the Colossal Mech. Need a hard sci fi setting spacecraft? Grab a Solar Sailor. Need the Enterprise? Baby, get yourself a futuristic cruiser. Playing Stargate? Oh, they have your shopper eye. Back to the Future? Hop into the DeLorean, baby. We got 1.21 gigawatts. Doctor Who? Man, it's bigger on the inside. Ha ha ha.
Sir, too obvious. Calm down, please. These primitives can't handle your level.
What? Alright. Next, Chapter 9 Creatures and NPCs. Features some 29 new creatures, perfect for different types of sci-fi subgenres. As you can imagine, there's not much for me to say here, as it would just be spoiling a lot of the creatures, but it does also go into detail about other creatures to use from the Red Book, which is always nice. Here we finally begin the big change. This section is on the Revel, an example setting designed based on the information and ideas from the Whitebook and the Red Book. I've heard some good things about the Revel, especially using it in Numenera as a bit of a jump off to begin night travel, as they say in that setting. But I've not really gone through the setting of the Revel, so I really don't know about it. Kinda seems bad that I don't know much about the setting presented here, but the thing is, I'm not here for the setting. I am here for the mechanics and the new things this Whitebook offers me. Again, no shade on MCG, Bruce, or anyone else, I just haven't delved into it. The next part is... jeez. Role-playing in the Revel. Okay, again. I've heard nothing but good things, especially in using these adventure shorts and hooks in Numenera as night adventures. I just haven't run them. They look great, very professional, and I like that they present the adventure as both a story and as a series of points. To me, that's a very helpful way to adapt the information I'd want to use. I just haven't run it yet. Lastly, literally actually in the last page, sports a great GM and player aid in the form of the Space Combat Status Tracker. It does look confusing at first glance, but it's really easy to use. Should you get this book? If you're going to do a game with any kind of space travel or anything in the related sphere, like say using magic to make a ship in a fantasy setting travel through the Sea of Stars with a name inspired by the 15th century slang name for sailors, then yes, this book is very useful. Also if you need Spirit Wars. Who said that? Basically, if you want to use Cypher to run any kind of sci-fi based game, this book is worth its weight. Also, this book with Numenera's Edge of the Sun and Torment Tides of Numenera, the Explorer's Guide, makes for everything you need to run an amazing TTRPG in the Warframe setting. Just saying. This book gives you Railjacks. Edge of the Sun gives you Warframes, Augmix, and Transference. And Torment Tides of Numenera, the Explorer's Guide gives you Tenno, Cast Off Descriptor Reflavored. Grab the Red Book, and wham bam thank you Lotus.
Message received.
Ah! Witch! Nexus, cut transmission. Oops, too far. Okay, let's end this properly. Thank you everyone for watching this video dive on the Whitebook of the Stars Are Fire. I hope you found the information interesting and useful, or at the very least say that you don't feel like you just wasted 14 odd minutes of your life. Next week I'll be talking about the next book released, Stay Alive. So you better stay alive until then. Watch your back, Sarah. It moves when you stop looking.